So the nature of being is infinite. Being is infinite. Not possible to find an endpoint in being. Being is eternal. The feeling of being is not in time. When the centerless nature of your own being meets the fiber, the substance of beingness, another way to say it is when your heart, feeling of your heart, feels the eternal nature of beingness. Something becomes alive. And the reverberations of that aliveness spreads infinitely. The feeling of that which is infinite is the feeling of being. It's so alive. It doesn't have to do with anything. It's just the nature of being. Or the nature of consciousness. It's two words for the same thing. When your consciousness becomes conscious, your infinite consciousness becomes conscious of the infinite nature of beingness. it awakens to its own self-recognition. And everything becomes so alive. There is this shift in perspective from living life seeing through the eyes of matter to seeing through the eyes of consciousness. It's everywhere. You no longer see through the eyes of matter. It's the process of awakening to yourself. Because the eyes of conscious awareness is everywhere. And it is aware of itself. What is recognized is that the mind-body organism cannot awaken. The story of me cannot awaken. Someone cannot awaken. Someone is the hypnosis that creates the habit of experiencing life through the seeing of these eyes, the sensations in the body, the story of all of those that I affect and are affecting me and my world. It is all one sphere. That pulls the attention from the nature of being. The importance of my little world. The importance of the character that appears in my little world, and that character's desire to follow this concept called awakening, which is all fabricated in this little world. But the eyes of being is unlimited. There's no limitation. And when your conditioned habit has been freed, you become this conduit in consciousness awakening to itself. It's not a you that awakens. Could say consciousness has forgotten through the inhabiting of this computer program, this mind, body, and its perceptions and its world, that there has been forgetting this particular aspect of consciousness. Created the world of a person living in time. And if it is grace, this person goes on the quest to become awakened. But who is this person? There is no person. When you feel yourself, you feel what is everywhere. For most, there are still these subtle threads that pull it back into my experience. But that's just the overlay of the dream. The my who is experiencing, you cannot find the my. And when you cannot find the my, you cannot find the experience. The direct falling into yourself is falling into the feeling that is infinite. When this feeling that is infinite is conscious of itself, it awakens something within itself. There begins to be a recognition that the true you has no point of reference, no longer sees out of these eyes. But sees out of the eyes of being. And then everything comes alive. Consciousness awakens to itself, and everything becomes alive, and the reverberations fan out endlessly. What is discovered is the total insignificance of what once seemed to have all the significance. And that is me and my experiences, my future and my past, my life. Freedom is freedom from that. You do not free yourself from that. It is beingness that remembers itself. And you are beingness. You are everywhere. You are defined by nothing. You are not in time. You are not in location. To feel yourself is to know yourself. To know yourself is what enlivens the self. Nature of the self is joy. When there is simply feeling joy that is everywhere, the joy becomes on fire. Since this joy is not in a location, it is in no relationship with the objects that appear to be in location. Yet all of the objects that may appear to be in location are within this field of this aliveness. So everything becomes more alive. There is no time in consciousness. There is no distance. It can be felt because it is the nature of being. When it is felt, it is enlivened, and the enlivening of consciousness is the greatest gift to everything. To every object that appears, to everything. Whether the character is in joy or suffering, whether there is identification or not, there begins to be this discovery. It's never affected you. You are beingness. Beingness is everywhere. You no longer see out of the eyes, but out of what is eternal, infinite. And all that is seen out of the eyes that are infinite and eternal is that which is infinite and eternal. And it is in that awareness that consciousness wakes up to itself. And that is the great possibility of the life. No matter how large the story may be of situations, sensations, emotions, it is such a minute it is such a nothing, really. It is all being programmed. It's working out of a repetitive program where nothing new ever happens. Eventually what is discovered is nothing ever happened, for there had to be a you for it to happen to, and the you is a myth. And if the you is struggling to become enlightened, it's feeding a myth. It is just to feel your being. It's just to feel your nature. That's everywhere. When love is feeling love, love explodes. When joy is feeling joy, joy explodes. When consciousness is conscious of itself, it awakens to itself. And it enlivens everything. It's why the form starts to smile. Because the form appears in the eternal field that awakens to itself. It's why all of the forms feel a sense of something that feels really good. But it is not about the form. The form receives consciousness. Beingness. The beingness is everywhere. It always is. When that which is everywhere receives itself, it is so on fire to simply feel what is unbounded. To feel the light that is unbounded. The taste of freedom, of happiness that is unbounded. And when it is felt, it is awakened. An individual is not awakened. What is awakened is that which is centerless, boundless, timeless. The deeper there is the falling into this, the more alive it becomes. The more there is the recognition that the story of my life is such a tiny little thread that moves across the screen of awareness. Just to feel this joy. It is the feeling of your being. Seeing and feeling out of what is everywhere. It is just a shift of perspective. The subtlest little shift that opens up the most enormous thing. As spoken, I believe, yesterday, it is true that the lion's share of the work of the journey, 85, maybe 90% of the work lies in the personal arena. So that all of the subtle aspects of arrogance and fear and protection, judgment, opinion, get eroded through humility into nothing. It is the vast, vast majority of the work. And in this, there has been a lot of time spent and very, very deep maturity. But it is all a preparation. It is all a preparation. And what it is a preparation for is the discovery of yourself. It is the discovery of yourself that illumines the whole cosmos. How are you?
Great. This has been quite a this has been quite an experience. I am learning so much. It's hard to put it all into words, and I don't want to go on and on, but I got here and I was in this really, for me, in an ecstatic state. I was just so happy to be here. And then last week, it was almost like I went numb. And then I thought, well, maybe this is about not getting attached to experiencing love or the self the way I have. Maybe it's about not being so attached to the experience. And then also, I've been looking for a place. And when I got here, it appeared as though there just weren't any rentals. And then I thought, well, maybe I'm going numb because I'm worried about that. And the ego is trying to run this show. And then I heard from a property manager, and I think I might have a place. And now I'm feeling really ecstatic again. So I guess I do have a question. It's like, am I going on this roller coaster because of all this outside me kind of experience thing?
The nature of the mind, body, organism, its nature is like a roller coaster. When it is in the opening phase, and one is on a path like this, when it is in the opening phase, it dissolves, and there is the taste of the beauty. In the closing phase, there is an experience of someone being lost. And the openings and the closings have equal importance because they wear down the identification. When you as you are, which is consciousness, which is the self, awakens to itself, it's permanent because it has nothing to do with the character, with perception, with change, with time. The very flavor of consciousness which animates this form in that process for everyone, it has lost touch with itself. When there is an opening, there is a taste. The taste drives the hunger, strengthens the willingness. In the closing phase, there is a burning away. The opening and closing is the process of erosion from the experience of someone into the realization of no one. Out of the realization of no one is the recognition of consciousness, self, that has nothing whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. It has nothing to do with an imagined individual. Yet the flavor of consciousness, which is the flavor of you, like with every player, it has forgotten. When consciousness recognizes itself, it is very, very different than when the person has an opening. When the person has an opening, there is a sense this is happening for me. There is a me who is enjoying the opening. It is all in perfect orchestration. It is all carrying itself.
That kept popping in and out. All just perfect, and it's just doing its thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the maturity to have the attention on just receiving the experience of numbing is a much greater indicator than the cosmic experience in an opening. The receiving, the closing, is humility. When there is humility in the closing phase can do its work, which is burning something away.
I think I was receiving it, but I'm not sure what that means.
You spoke that it was being offered so that there was not such an attachment to outcome. This is receiving it.
Okay. Because I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, over these past months, you feel like a different being.
Wow.
Love you, sweetie pie.
When you just said, carry it all the way through, and it just felt like this, yes.
Yes, this is what all of this is sculpted around. It appears for the players who are destined to carry it through. Even though free will remains, it is no guarantee that the play orchestrates itself in a way that opens that door. But it is meant to feed the hunger, to feed the hunger, to feed the hunger. If it is not the greatest hunger, this environment is not right. But the greatest hunger, in that there is the grace that the formatting of the dreamscape formats itself. But what it's formatting itself for is the shift from the greatest hunger to the only hunger. happens by itself. How could it not happen by itself? The individual is just imaginings. The self alone is. And the wisdom of the self knows the navigation perfectly. That which has forgotten must remember enough for it to become the most important thing. And then eventually, it is the only thing. And then it is finished. The thing about it is when it is the only thing, it is the self's longing for the self. It is not possible so long as there are subtle tendrils, fibers that are attaching this me for it to be the only thing. When it is the most important thing, this is grace, because it will carry you to yourself.